Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Pick Up the Mic, Harvest Church's only official podcast. I'm Mike Reiner, lead pastor at Harvest Church in Western Pennsylvania. With me is faithful sidekick and resident expert on big words, Top Shelf Will Land, the executive pastor here. How you doing, Will? You awake?
I'm good today.
You're
it's
good?
a good day.
You said you were a little sleepy.
I am a little sleepy.
And also with us, producing everything we got going on is our good man, Cruiser. And are you mic'd up today?
I am mic'd up today.
It's about time. He's been skipping the mic because he doesn't want us to pick on him. Hey, listen, we had our first outdoor service at Harvest that was in our own backyard. And that yard's bigger than I thought it was.
It's way big.
It holds a lot of people, but we still had room for a lot more.
I think we could feed 5,000 people down there.
With one, with a couple of loaves and a couple of fish?
I don't know about how many loaves or fish. But
look, loaves and fish won't work today. People are like, where's the mayonnaise? And I don't like fish. And do you have any gluten-free? You couldn't get away with that. People were hungry back then. I think it's easier to feed hungry people. So get this. When I was in California, there was a steakhouse called the Hungry Hunter.
Yeah? Never heard of it.
Well, I don't know if the chain took off. It was in Arizona when I was there. And I thought about that once and thought, why would I eat at a place called the Hungry Hunter? Because a hungry hunter will eat anything.
Anything.
I want the well-satisfied, overfed hunter.
Yeah.
Guy who's a little picky. I don't want some kind of the hindquarters of a possum.
Yeah. You don't want to eat those sweetbreads.
I know.
Thymus gland or whatever people eat.
I don't want a hungry hunter. Hey, listen, the text we used was one that grabs me a lot. Jesus was in the boat. When he got in the boat with his guys to go across the lake and a big storm came up. What grabs me about this one is Jesus tells these guys to get in the boat. Then he goes to sleep on the boat and he sleeps through the storm. And for the life of me, I can't get a picture of that. Now, I don't know enough about the design of these boats. I think I saw one once when I was in Israel, but I'm not even sure if that was the boat. Do you think he had a cover over him? Because how do you sleep through a storm if you're getting wet?
Yeah, I mean, I have no picture of what the type of boat would be. You have to assume he's below deck in some sort of sheltered decking.
Yeah, you'd think there'd be a shelter.
Yeah, I mean, I was just on a small ocean boat in Chesapeake Bay, and there were some big waves.
Were you fishing?
Fishing.
Oh, what'd you catch?
Spanish mackerel.
How big are they?
Yeah, 18 inches.
Did you eat them?
Oh, we ate. Yeah, we caught 40 some, and we ate them.
Fried?
We ate some fried, we ate some grilled, and we brought a bunch home frozen.
Oh.
But, you know, I'm on Chesapeake Bay, so, I don't know, comparable to Sea of Galilee in size.
Yeah, so imagine.
And we were in some big swells.
And what's the boat do in those swells?
Well, I mean, we were in like a 21-foot boat, maybe 25-foot boat, so it's a sizable boat, not...
Yes,
and it is rocking like crazy, and we're getting splash over the side, like the actual holes in the side of the boat were necessary to let water.
That actually sounds less than
bow.
Pleasant.
Yeah, I don't know how you would have slept in it.
So
alcohol would have had to have been heavily involved for me to believe a man sleeping in the open bow of this boat.
Wait a minute, are you claiming that Jesus was asleep drunk?
No, maybe he's
no. Of course
I'm admitting to your
blasphemer
difficulty in imagining under normal circumstances someone sleeping in a boat in a storm that's going to sink the boat.
I'm going to assume he had to stay dry somehow, but still those waves taking you up and down and up and down. So he was tired. Maybe he always slept well. You know, he just had a clean conscience. He just slept well. He's like, I'm out. See you guys. But then the 12 were scared for their lives. Why didn't everyone just learn to swim and take a flotation device back then? I mean, they could swim. You'd think. I know Peter could swim. Maybe I don't know if all of them could.
Well, you would.
What about a flotation device? Piece of wood.
Piece of wood.
Yeah, when the boat breaks, float on that. So okay, so then here's the weird part is they wake Jesus up, and in Luke it says they said, "Master, we're perishing," but we get more from I think Mark tells us that they also said, do you not care?
Yeah, don't you love us?
Yeah, don't you care? We are perishing. And I can't help but think, what do they expect him to do? Swim to shore? I mean,
well, and that shows that they're getting the picture
that he's in control,
that he's got powers,
and he's in there snoozing.
And when you're in a point of total desperation, I mean, you're reaching for any bit of rope you can find. So maybe they didn't even know exactly what he's going to do. They just knew he's got a better shot than
maybe they were just yelling at him. Why are you sleeping? Don't you realize we're perishing? How could you be sleeping?
Or is it, don't you care that we're all about to die? Like maybe it's, don't you care that you're about to die too?
Jesus is like, hey, don't you care? He's like, oh, what's going on, guys? You know, and he's scratching that stuff. Do you think he got that stuff in his eye? Jesus got that stuff in his eye? I mean, we get stuff in our eyes. He's probably like, oh, man. Oh. What? They're like, what do you mean, what? Where? The boat's going up and down. Can't you hear the wind? Oh, okay. All right, guys. Hey, wind, knock it off. He said he spoke to the wind and the water and they stopped. And then he turned to them and he said, why were you afraid? Where's your faith? Right in the heart. But I'm on their side on this one.
I personally
you were
would
on
be.
that boat in the Chesapeake Bay. If it had gotten twice as bad, you'd have been like, do you know how to drive this boat? To the guy whose boat it was. Do you know what you're doing? Because this could be bad. You could have turned over.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And on the swimming comment, like, I am a pretty sound swimmer.
Well, you need a flotation device too.
And it's like, you get far enough out.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Like,
especially when the waves are chopping.
Well, and even in the bay, like, we couldn't see the land. Like, I wasn't under any false sense of my own capacity to swim to land.
You had one of them orange little things on.
No, they were available. I did not have one on.
Breaking the law. Breaking the law.
In Virginia, you just have
to have it in the boat.
Have the number in the boat of the people in the boat.
Okay. So that they can go flying into the ocean. Well, we found 7 of these floating life and
I
no
go down
people.
to a story? So I need to go into a story that happened on the same trip because we were doing a lot of kayaking and fishing, like offshore. And I'm in my brother-in-law's kayak, and this is the next day, and the swells were very big to the point that
so it was a kayak that you're on top of.
It's a kayak that I'm on top of.
Not the old school kayak where you're actually in it like a kazoo.
Correct.
Okay.
And I'm trying to paddle back to our beach, and the wind is so strong that it's taken everything I got to paddle this kayak and make progress back in the right direction. And anytime I got the boat parallel to the direction of the waves, so where the swells were like hitting the long side of the boat, all of a sudden, like,
you're going over.
I couldn't keep this sucker upright.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it started sinking. And it's exactly like you said. It's an open bow kayak. I didn't think there was any place for water to go in it, which I was wrong. There was. And all of a sudden I get rolled. Like, it's not behaving right. It's seeming weird. It's sluggish. It's too roly-poly. And it turns out it's because it's filling up with water in the inside of the kayak. And I get rolled over. And I right it. I lost my expensive fishing rod because I didn't have it tied.
Dag.
Almost lost my phone. Got my phone, thankfully. I get back up on the kayak, and all of a sudden, it's like not even supporting my weight now. Like, I'm getting back up on it, and the next wave hits me, and I roll again. And I do this 3 or 4 times, and I don't have my life jacket on. It's in the kayak. So I got the experience of trying to keep this kayak from sinking and not losing all my other crap, which included my phone and anything I might need to use to call for help if I had to, and trying to put a life jacket.
You mean if you had to. Dude, you were drowning.
and trying to put a life jacket on simultaneously. And I realized that the life jacket in the boat is not as good as you think when you need the life jacket on. It's pretty tough.
Yeah, you kind of imagine yourself going, oh, I'm going to put this on.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, I lifeguarded for a long time. I have a lot of scuba diving certifications, rescue diving. Like, I'm a swimmer. I'm a good swimmer, a sound swimmer. And I was like, I'm in a hairy spot here trying to get this life jacket on.
Water will kick your butt.
And I was very thankful that I got the life jacket on. I got to swimming and dragging the kayak now, and got lucky. I'm hundreds of yards off the shore, and all of a sudden it's shallow enough that all of a sudden I can touch on my tippy toes and my chin's out of the water. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to drown.
This is going to take a long time.
It's going to take a long time. It was too deep for me to walk and drag the kayak, but at least I could take breaks.
Water can kick your butt, and anyone who's been in the water a lot, it doesn't matter.
And I could not figure out for the life of me why the kayak was behaving so weird until I got to the shore
and tried it out.
I tried to drag the kayak
it was
up
too
on
heavy.
It weighed like 400 pounds, and then I realized the whole thing was full of water.
That's why this sucker.
And I lost my brand new $200.
So you were
fishing
alone
rod.
fishing.
Yeah.
I grew up in the water as a kid. We were always in pools in Florida, and then often in the ocean, but always in pools. And I as a teenager went out to California, started body surfing, but I'll tell you what, you get into the waves, you know who's boss, and it ain't you.
Yeah.
Or if you get into a riptide, even a little one, and it starts pulling you out, you got to float to the top, baby, and see if you can make yourself go somewhere else. You can see. I haven't been in that hairy of a situation, but I've been in a situation where I thought, I'm going to die if I don't do something. And so these guys were going to die. And Jesus, you're sleeping. He wakes up and rebukes the wind and the wave. And I don't blame him. I don't blame him. I think Jesus set them up to be scared.
Yeah.
So why would he do that? Will, why do you think he would do that?
Oh, it's like, what do they call it? An object lesson?
What was the lesson?
That I'm in control even in moments where you're tempted to forget that I am.
And when you don't know your future.
And when you don't know your future.
And I think that is the life lesson I take out of that. We are often fearful of the future, obviously. That's what we're fearful of. Jesus is like, he didn't make them any promises. He didn't say, hey, listen, guys, we're going to get in the boat. There's going to be a storm, but you're going to be okay because I have a plan for you. You're going to be writing the Bible, and you're going to be pretty important. And I know when you're going to die, and it ain't today. He didn't say any of that. He just said, get in the boat. And he knows. He says, just trust me. And the application for us should be obvious. Too much thought is given to when am I going to die? Am I safe? What's going to happen? Jesus says, I'm in the boat, doggone it. I've got this. Where's your faith? Where's your trust in me? Don't you know I care? So I thought that was a great lesson.
Yeah, and I thought, I mean, you went to further in the future where Peter and John are asking about the time of their deaths.
Yeah.
And I love how you tied that together too.
Yeah, because he told Peter, he told him about how he was going to die. And he didn't tell him when. But John must have written that after Peter was dead, because he said this was about how he was going to die. So he knew the whole story. And then Peter goes, John, what about him? When's he going to die? How's he going to die? And Jesus said, if he stays alive till I come back, what's that to you?
Yeah, you don't need to know.
You be concerned about you. And it just so happens that a couple weeks before that, my latest grandson was born, little Brooks. He's a cute little feller. And little Brooks came into the world in a strange way. I think I'm going to send you a picture.
Through some turmoil.
Cruiser. Yeah. So my daughter-in-law, Brooke, had a ruptured uterus. And it was at the time of the height of her contractions. In other words, she should have been having a baby, but instead of having a baby, the baby wasn't coming out. The contractions were bam, 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 bam. Where's the baby? And it turns out that her uterus had ripped, and so she was slowly bleeding to death. And you know, if there wasn't someone close by, no one would have known. And in fact, the nurses weren't really sure. The surgeon came in and said, what's going on here? Where's the baby? Where's the baby's head? And when she determined that the baby's head wasn't where it should be, she said she knew exactly what was happening. And there were only minutes to go before my daughter-in-law was dead and the baby was dead. Both are safe to this day. All that to say, going through that, I would not blame my son, my daughter-in-law for saying, am I going to die? Is she going to die? And being afraid. But as it turns out, that baby and her life were not in her hands. They were in God's. I'm not saying you're never going to be scared. What I am saying, though, is you can always trust God. That baby couldn't have died that day, we know now, because it wasn't God's time. So, hey, I'm going to send you a little video of my niece and that baby. Are you ready for a cruiser?
Yep.
Okay, here it comes. And you can play it because I want to show you my niece, my granddaughter. It's not my niece. My granddaughter, Lila, and her baby brother. I got a little video. You're going to love this. See, I'm a grandpa now, so I do baby pictures and grandchildren pictures on my podcast. That's what we do. And you guys, a lot of people won't care, but you moms out there get it. You'll be like, oh, that's so cute. And you're right, it is cute. So what they did with this little guy is they have a hypothermia treatment because they don't know how long he went without any blood in his brain. And because as soon as she started to bleed, it clamps down on the blood flow to the umbilical cord because the body is trying to not bleed to death. And that means the oxygen to the baby was cut. And nobody knows when she started to bleed internally, so no one knows how long. So then the baby comes out not breathing. They intubate it, get it breathing, but they don't know if it's brain damaged. He is brain damaged, and he is not, as it turns out. But they didn't know that. So what they did, Will, was they took a bunch of ice packs. I even saw a picture of it. And they iced him down like he was a six-pack of beer. I mean,
that's crazy.
I know. It was weird. Then they took him 40 minutes away to a hospital in Charlotte where they, in their NICU, which is normally for little tiny babies, but they also specialize in the hypothermia treatment. So for 72 hours, they keep the baby's temperature between 90 and 93. So it's about 8 degrees too low. 5 degrees
cold.
And that keeps the kid asleep, but the brain is colder, so it does not have a need for oxygen. And they're trying to have the brain develop and kind of wake up the way it's supposed to without needing that much oxygen because there's not that much oxygen perhaps in the kid. And they learn this with stroke victims or something like that. And so when my wife and I rushed down there and Mom was across town, my daughter-in-law, and couldn't be there with her baby, which is torture for a new mother. So she said, would you guys be with the baby? And we said, oh, absolutely. So we were in the NICU with that baby all day long on thaw-out day. It took 7 hours to thaw this kid out. They thaw him out really slow. And he was cute. His little hands were blue. And I would just keep massaging his hands, trying to warm him up. He didn't know he was cold, I'm told, but because he was sleeping the whole time. But eventually they thawed him out, and they did the brain thing, and he's fine. He's wonderful. You got that video? Hey, let's see the video of my grandchildren, everybody. If you don't want to see this, a good time for you to go to the bathroom. Come back later. That's Lila. She's
looking.
And that's her little baby
saying,
brother.
Who are you? Are you my sister?
That's when he was about a week old, at the most.
He's so silly.
He is.
And there's my little nephew. What do I call him nephew? My grandson.
Silly baby.
So that's
He's
Lila,
silly like your other brother.
Brooks, and Zion.
Baba.
It means you gotta get a new tattoo edition.
Yeah, I've got to add 2 names to my tattoo because I got 6 tattooed on me, and I got to add Corinth and Brooks. No one has normal names. These kids, I mean, they're nice names. Corinth, Brooks, Zion. Whatever happened to Susan and Bill?
I'm right here.
John. You know, these are they millennials? Are you a millennial? Is my kid a millennial?
Yeah.
Millennials don't like old-fashioned names.
I love old-fashioned names, but it's a point of difference between my wife and I.
Yeah, that's why they named their kid Sturgula. No, they didn't. Just kidding. Actually, your daughter does have an old-fashioned name.
Yeah, I mean,
It's nice. Tell everyone what it is.
It's Eliza.
That's old-fashioned.
Eliza Ray.
Ray isn't.
Yeah, well, that's a maiden name.
Still, it's a beautiful name.
Yeah.
Eliza Ray. See, now that is kind of old-timey. I thought you said your wife didn't like that.
I like, I don't know.
Did she submit to your leadership on this?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Yes. Well,
Because I let her, yeah, I'm happy with the name pick. I love the name pick. Yeah, I'm definitely an old fashioned, particularly for boys. Like Luke and Bill and Tom and John and
how about Chester?
Peter and
I don't hear many Chesters like Chester Arthur. Willington. That'd be like named after you, but different. Anyway.
Well, and the really hard part, this is where the rub lies in this text, is even if it hadn't gone that way, it still would have been in God's time and in God's plan. That's where the trust comes in. I mean, as pastors, we deal with health and death all the time. I mean, it's just, you're in a church of a certain size. I mean, once you get beyond 30 people, somebody in the congregation or somebody in their family is sick or dying all the time. And it's just knowing that, resting in the knowledge that even then it's still going to be okay.
Yeah, that was Martin Lloyd-Jones, the great Scottish preacher who died, I think, in the 70s.
We've told this story on the podcast before.
Oh, well, I shouldn't tell it again.
Not sad were his last words.
That's right.
Not
sad. I didn't know. You have such a good memory. I just keep telling the same stories over and over. Then you're older, that's what happens. Stop me if I've told you this before, you're supposed to say, but I don't say that.
Yeah, I mean, when you bring in the Peter story, Jesus telling Peter how he's going to die. It's not like Jesus is apologetic to Peter.
No, you're going to die, buddy. And it's rough. So, and I think that's the thing, that we're shocked that we die. Especially when you're young and you're introduced to the concept of your mortality. It's shocking. Wait, I'm going to die?
Well, and that kind of is the first of the sometimes many midlife crises, is like when you're in, I can speak from personal experience, from a man's perspective. When you're a young man in your 20s, you're immortal. Like you don't get hurt very much. You can do almost anything to your body and recover quickly. And it's just not at the forefront of your mind. You're never going to die.
Yep.
And doesn't matter how stupid you are. And then all of a sudden you get to a certain age where you do get hurt really bad, or bad things do happen in your body. Or
what happens is you get married.
Yeah.
When you start thinking about these things.
Yeah. And yeah, and then when you're confronted with that, I think that's often when you have your
mortality is, so we shouldn't be shocked. Sometimes people die and they go, God, why did you let this happen? To which my question always is, did you expect it was never going to happen?
Well,
I mean, it's going to happen.
I have a theory as to the reason it's so natural to be offended by death. This is my theory, is that because intrinsically that it's not supposed to be this way, that death is part of the corruption of the human nature and of the world, that in the garden, right, in the original format, there was no death. And so I think the reason everybody by nature, well, most people are offended by or are scared of death or don't like death is because it's just an acknowledgement that something inside me says this is wrong. It's not. I'm not supposed to die. I don't want to die. I shouldn't be dying.
We hate death.
We hate it, and I think that's an acknowledgement that because it is bad, because it shouldn't be like this.
Lewis said one of the things that convinced him of God's existence was his desires. His desires. He had desires he found for which nothing on the earth would satisfy. And his logic went like this. if somebody's hungry, it's because there's such thing as food. It doesn't mean they'll get the food. Like if someone's hungry, he could die of starvation. If someone's thirsty, it's because there's such thing as water. If someone has sexual urges, because there's such thing as procreation. He says, but why do humans have urges for things that Earth doesn't have? And he was talking about that feeling we all have, that hunger for satisfaction that sometimes hits us, that says there's got to be more. He called it joy. He defined that for himself, joy, that feeling of upward desire for something great. And when it hit him, he called it joy. And he said, how come I have a desire for eternity, a desire for heavenly things, if they don't exist, if I'm just a mere bit of matter? And he says, well, if there's a desire for something, maybe we're created for something that's not here, and that's God. So I agree with you. We don't want to die because we're not supposed to die. Death is humiliating, period. And the first time I heard someone say something like that, I don't remember what he said, it was something similar. I remember thinking, why is it humiliating? You know, people say stupid things in popular places like death is part of life. I'm like, wait a minute.
That's an oxymoron. It's actually not.
And when my kids were little, we took them to see the lion movie, and they said that death is the circle of life when lions eat other animals. It's the circle of life. And I'm thinking, well, not for the thing they just ate, it ain't. It's a circle of death. It's a circle of carnage. It's a constant carnage where only the lion escapes without being eaten. This sucks. You know, that's fine if you're a lion. It's the circle of life. Otherwise, it's really...
The gazelle's not singing that song
with
very
his
happily.
legs up in the air and something chewing on his intestines. He's like, this is the circle of pain.
Yeah.
I hate this. So, but think about it. Think about your own death. Do you want anyone to see you dead? Do you want to die in bed and your wife wakes up and you've gone to the bathroom all over yourself? I mean, do you want to die at the next time you go out in public? Do you want to die there? No, that'd be embarrassing. Like I could fall over dead. Like if
and then people try to make it not so bad by saying, well, I won't care. I'll be dead.
Yeah, but those few seconds before that. And what an embarrassment that's going to be. Yeah, and you might care. What if the first thing you feel in the afterlife is shame because you're dead? You don't know that. You're like, this sucks. Yeah. So, yeah, death is supposed to be foreign to Adam's race. And it is now if you have Christ. So anyway, what are we studying in the Bible today? That was the past. The past is gone, my friend. We're not talking about boats
Well,
today.
I want to bring back up another concept.
Okay.
Before we move on.
I'm ready.
So the story about the boat is in Luke 8. We're about to jump to Luke 9.
Yeah.
Before we go there, this is something we've covered before in the podcast, but since I know not everybody listens to every single episode.
And you should. I mean, who are you that is not listening to every episode?
Don't let Mike guilt you. There's this concept, and you'll remember who it's from, but I don't remember. The teeter-totter where worry and worship cannot simultaneously exist at the same...
In equal proportions.
In equal proportions.
Right.
So if you're worrying, if your worry is high, that means your worship level is low. You're losing track of how big God is and a good theological perspective on God and his sovereignty over you and this world and your life. Mm-hmm. And in the opposite fashion, the more you worship and focus on the nature and person of God, the triune God, the more your worry will diminish.
And interesting about that is preaching style. There's a big push coming out of the 90s in the seeker-sensitive movement that us pastors would hear these words in people try to sell us training materials or seminars or conferences saying you need to speak to the people's felt needs. And there are a lot of preachers trained on that who to this day, if you go to these sermons, go to these churches, you're going to get sermons based on your felt needs. In other words, perceive where the people are feeling less than good, needy, and feed that in the sermon. So, you're lonely. Feeling lonely today, the Lord is with you. Are you frightened? The Lord is comforting. So even that, though, is on the wrong side of the teeter-totter because you're putting them in their fears or in their worries. But if you preach on the greatness of God and the wonder of God and the eternal life of God, you don't have to comfort someone who's afraid of dying. Wait, that's eternal life? That's God? God has a way of lifting your spirits if you preach God's greatness. And so we should declare the greatness of God to one another. Because if your mind fills up with that, to the extent it fills up with that, fear is going to have a hard time getting a place in there, and worry. So, and we're all going to battle worry our whole lives, just like these guys.
All right, so thank you for entertaining my...
So chapter 9, he's sending the 12 out.
Yeah, we're in Luke 9, verse 1.
Let me ask you a question here. Why did he send the 12 out to preach? Because in all the movies and TV, you think they're just following him around doing dopey things and getting in trouble. But that's not true. He actually sends them out without him. He called the 12 together, gave them power and authority over all the demons and to heal diseases. So he gave them, here's some power. How'd he do it? I hope he used his hand because I'd want some kind of Pope movement, right? Popes are good with blood.
Or like the knighting, took out a sword. And
he could have tapped them with a stick like Moses. Get on one knee, tap him on the shoulder. I now giveth thee the power over demons. He might not have to do anything. He probably just looked at him and winked. Ha! He could have done anything. He could have went. But the point is, they're getting a power they didn't have. One of the people getting the power is Judas.
Mm-hmm.
Judas is going to have the power to cast out demons in the name of Jesus and heal diseases. But he's not saved. He's on his way to hell. He's the son of perdition. Interesting thought. And then he sent them out to do what in verse 2?
Proclaim the kingdom of God.
Yeah, they're preachers. And to perform healing. You'd think the power to heal and cast out demons would be enough. He says, no, you're here to bring a message. Why did he send them out, Will? Your best guess.
I think it's practice. It's practice for what's about to come.
On-the-job training?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like it's quality control, right? Well,
what if they suck at it and he's not there to see it?
Right. So, you have them do it while you're still there to coach.
Did he send out some surveys? How did the apostles do?
Before you're going to send them out to do it after you're gone.
He stinks at it. He kept healing the squirrels and he missed my grandma.
Well, yeah. And that's why they
So on-the-job training, I'm going to go with but I'm going to go with there's got to be more. There's got to be more. So
that the power is in the message, not him.
Maybe. I think. I mean,
it is in him too.
They are trained. They are being trained, but I think also he has a mission to bring a message to the cities and towns of Israel.
Well, I feel like we got to read the text now.
Right, but he has a mission to do it. Jesus does.
Yeah,
but he's only one guy, and he only has a limited time. God didn't let him. God the Father didn't let God the Son take 10 years.
Yeah, or 1,000.
You got like 2.5 years. You got to hit all the towns. And part of the
Jesus just did the whole Great Commission by himself.
Yeah,
he took 1,000 years, never died, and he reached all the people himself.
Right, and that was not his plan. So it necessitated bringing on co-workers, and that's what they are. And it says, and he said to them, "Take nothing for your journey, neither a staff nor a bag nor bread nor money. Do not even have 2 tunics apiece." Why do you think he did that?
I presume it's to teach them that the Lord will care for your needs as they're
Absolutely.
presented. It's learning to trust.
Who's going to care for their needs? Don't say God.
Well, the people they're ministering to.
That's right. He's setting a pattern. The people to whom you minister care for your physical needs. You wonder, why do we pay pastors? Well, because you're supposed to. Jesus, we already saw, had his needs met by
some rich people.
And he's saying if you're giving them the gospel, if that's not worth food and clothing and housing to them, Move on. You don't want those people. In fact, that's what he says. Whatever house you enter, stay there until you leave that city, which is why I would go to the best houses, ones with pools in the back. I mean, I ain't going to no hovel. If I'm stuck in this shack till I leave, I'm just kidding. I don't know how they picked their house, but stay till you leave that city. So they had to hit the whole town with the gospel. And as for those who do not receive you, go out of that city, shake the dust off your feet as a testimony against them. So there's an expectation that if you're being received, you're also going to be cared for. What do you think if you're in a city that doesn't receive them? What does that look like? That's got to be anticlimactic. You go in with the power to heal everybody, cast out demons, and preach the message, and they're like, get out of here. Get out of here.
I mean, it could be heartbreaking, right? I mean, because you just think about now, once you've received Christ and you're particularly, you're all excited about it, particularly at first we're always excited about it, but
yeah.
But you see a lot of new converts that are on fire for the Lord, as some people say, in the honeymoon period, and they want to tell everybody, and it's kind of disappointing when people are like,
yeah,
I don't want none of this. Well, imagine being with a real Jesus, like, no, we met God. Like, we met God.
Let me show you a trick. Bring me your grandma.
Yeah, like, you guys don't even understand what we're saying to you. The guy just stopped the waters with his voice.
We saw it.
We saw it.
Yeah, we didn't see it.
Like, yeah, I don't really care.
So look what it says about it. It says they shake the dust off your feet, which is a ritual. Like, they have just as much dust on their feet when they go to a city that receives them. So it has nothing to do with the dust.
It's like
So what you're saying, even the remnants of your city, I don't want touching me.
Right.
Why? According to verse 5.
As a testimony against them.
To who? Who's it a testimony to? And what's that mean?
Who's it a testimony to?
If you're a witness in a stand, you're giving testimony.
To the Lord.
It's a
That you tried.
So there'll be some point in the future history
where they're going to have to reckon with the fact that they heard it and didn't want it.
And then maybe God replays the video, right?
Yeah.
Here's Simon wiping his feet off. That's him on the video. They're like, we didn't know you had video. Well, we did. Here's the video of Simon wiping the dust off of your town, off his feet. And there's you going, good. And off to hell you go.
Yeah.
An opportunity to hear the gospel is better than winning the lottery. We take it such for granted here because we're so wealthy with the gospel, but it's a big deal. You're actually this close to touching heaven and the Holy Spirit and God and salvation and all that is. So interrupt me if you want to. Departing, they began going through the villages, preaching the gospel and healing everywhere. Okay, so they did their job. Now, Herod the Tetrarch heard of what was happening. What's a tetrarch? So Herod the Great had a bunch of kids, and he named them all Herod.
As all
George Foreman.
Yes. Kings do.
Now, he was not a real king. He's an Edomite, but he's a political figure who took power, and the Romans gave it to him to help rule and enrich himself. He was very cruel, Herod the Great. He'd kill a lot of people for the Romans.
And the Romans do this all over the place as a way of keeping peace with so many different ethnicities. Like, take someone from within the ethnicity you're taking over and make them the pseudo governor or lord, so that they take all the heat from the Romans.
And you got to give the heat.
Yeah.
You got to give the heat. You can't love your people. You're going to have to go in with a sword and say, well, you don't like the Romans, I'll kill you. Now, Herod, not being a Jew, he was an Edomite. And what are Edomites? Those are the children of Edom. Edomites, Esau, Edomites, yes. So they actually were no longer a nation, and they kind of melded back into the Jews, but the Jews knew the difference, and so they were kind of cousins. And they broke up all the regions of Israel, and different Herods were in charge of different parts.
And it's a good, if you're a new Christian, it's a good thing to know that every time you hear Herod in the Gospels,
It could be a different guy.
It's not the same guy.
It's good to get a study Bible because I can't keep the Herods straight. If you get a study Bible, normally have a chart of Herods, and down below it'll tell you which Herod we're dealing with. In this case, what you need to know is this guy, he's going to be the one, I'm pretty sure, who's going to try Jesus. I mean, one of the trials at the end. It said, Herod the Tetrarch heard of all that was happening, is greatly perplexed, because it was said that by some that John had risen from the dead, and by some that Elijah had appeared, and others that one of the prophets of old had risen again. So Herod is excited to meet a magic man, and he wants to meet Jesus. He's not a believer, though. Look at verse 9. It said, I myself cut off John's head, had John the Baptist beheaded. But who is this man about whom I hear such things? I've killed John. And how could he have risen from the dead? And he kept trying to see him. And
him being Jesus.
Him, yes. Now that's the end of him. He'll come back at the end of the story, but that's it. And then when the apostles returned, they gave an account to him of all they had done, taking them with him. He withdrew by himself to a city called Bethsaida, and the crowds were aware of this and followed him, and welcoming him, he began speaking to them about the kingdom of God and curing those who had need of healing. So how long did they get to do this? It's not said, but they all got together again for the reunion tour, and they followed Jesus, and the word of him spread everywhere, and then the crowds were bigger than ever.
And then, again, I mean, we've covered this before, but this idea of Jesus as I think the word you use is itinerant preacher.
Yes.
So he goes to a new place, Bethsaida, and he speaks to them about the kingdom of God, which is what you hear about in the Sermon on the Mount, the kingdom of God. You presume there's a lot of the same preaching, preaching the same message to all these different places.
And that's what the apostles preached.
Yep.
They weren't supposed to come up with new material like comedians who have to have new material whenever the crowd has heard the old stuff. They were preaching the same messages he preached. But now the crowds are bigger than ever, and he brings them all together, and he's about to pop a miracle on them. The day was ending. The 12 came and said, send these crowds away that they may go into the surrounding villages and countryside and find lodging and get something to eat, for here we are in a desolate place. So the difficulty was people management, and the apostles said, we can't manage this many people. And Jesus said to them, you give them something to eat. And they said to him, we have no more than 5 loaves and 2 fishes, unless we perhaps go and buy food for all these. For there are about 5,000 men. So that doesn't even include women necessarily. That could be, let's see, that's... yeah, Andres, which means man or husband. It's not and so there could have been 10,000. Could have included the women and children, but it could have been half the people. And he said, have them sit down to eat in groups of 50. They did so and had them all sit down. Now, verse 13, you give them something to eat. Jesus was asking them to do something for which they had 0 resources and no plan. Does God ever do that for us?
Yeah.
Did God ever give you an idea? Why don't you do this? Yeah.
I don't know how I'm going to pull that off.
I don't know how I'm going to do that.
I would like to do that.
Yes. So there's no magic in little dreams, but he was going to show them that he can do it. And so they all sat down. He took the 5 loaves, 2 fishes, looking up to heaven. He blessed them and broke them, and giving them to the disciples, he set them before the people. And they all ate and were satisfied. And the broken pieces which they had left over and picked up were how many? 12. So when this happens, do you want to look real close at his hands? I do. Like if someone's doing magic, you're like, do that trick again. I want to watch him do it. I want to see, where's the sleight of hand? Jesus is breaking bread and it's multiplying. Don't you want to look real close so see it happen?
Yeah, I mean, I never really thought about it like that, but yeah.
I don't see why you didn't.
I'm not a very imaginative guy.
So I want to stop at verse 17, but I want to bring something up that C.S. Lewis brought up that I really liked. he pointed out that the
Man, you really like this. What's his name? C.S. Lewis guy?
Clive Staples Lewis, he went by Jack. If
feel
you were
like-
named Clive, you'd go by Jack too.
Feel like people should read some of him?
Thanks for dropping that hint. Yes, you should start with Mere Christianity. Mere Christianity, just read that. It's very accessible. So Lewis points out, and I think it's called an essay called Miracles, but I'm not sure. It could be the Grand Miracle. He had two different essays. But he said the miracles that Jesus did were simply the sort of things that God already does. Have you heard this before? Have you heard this, Cruiser? I think so. He goes, I think so. I put him on. He didn't expect me to put him on the spot. He's over there playing video games while we do this. So Jesus, like, if you think of, if somebody wanted to show off and say, I am the powerful, greatest Oz, you know, he has the big green head and the smoke, Oz, whoa, it makes you look great. Like, if I wanted to show that I had God power, it might occur to me, if I hadn't read the story, to like levitate farm animals. Like, you go to these villages and you get their cow to float, and someone goes, whoa, and I'll say, touch his hoof, and the guy reaches up, make it go up. Whoa, you can't, huh? Of course, I can make the cow go to the bathroom on top of him. I mean, these are the kind of things I think of.
I don't know why your brain goes there, because mine didn't.
I can make their whole house levitate, spin around, come back down. You know, I could have their chickens lay eggs in the air, have them hit the ground and blow up like a firework, right? People would know I was God, right? What did Jesus do? He took some bread and he multiplied it. Who takes wheat and fills the fields but God? And we don't look at the magic of that and see that that in itself is a miracle. It's a miracle that you can take one grain of wheat, let it die, put it in the ground, and it comes up and it produces an entire plant with lots of grains of wheat. And if you let them die and put them in the ground, you can fill the world's fields with wheat.
With sunshine and water.
Sunshine, water, and dirt.
It's crazy. Or
And
you
no
get a
one
cut on your hand.
And it fixes itself.
And it fixes itself.
So these are miracles. That's right. That's a good, and Lewis would point to that one too. These are miracles that God does every day. You say, oh, they're not miracles. Science has explained them. Listen, that's the stupidest argument in the world, isn't it?
Yes. And the philosophy book I've been reading points out the difference between.
Well, why don't you tell us that? I'd like to hear this.
Well,
because let me set
how
it up.
And why?
Let me set it up. You say this. Some people say, yeah, well, you think it's a miracle that wheat falls to the ground and grows because your mind is small and you have to lean on the crutch of religion. You just say God did it. But now science has shown that God doesn't do it. Instead, it breaks open and out comes this when the moisture hits it and osmosis happens, and then it gets this, and the light from the sun is energy and it's transferred into chlorophyll.
Yeah.
You know, so of course it's not a miracle.
Yeah, and this book uses fancy language because it's a little older. So it talks about indication versus explanation.
Okay.
That's the words. And the way I think of it in layman's terms is the modern materialist mind feels satisfied by answering the question how. Just a deeper, more detailed chain of hows. How does this happen? How does this happen? And that's indicative explanation, right? It's just you're indicating what's happening.
Right.
But it actually has no explanatory power. There is no answer to the question why.
Why?
Like that it happens, I can already see with my eyes. I see that when I get cut, it heals. And yes, with a microscope, I can see in more detail that this thing interacts with this thing and closes this thing. And if I go one more level of zoom, I can find out that, oh yeah, and then there's even smaller things that this then does this. you're tricking yourself into thinking you understand by just being able to see smaller and smaller gears on the way down without ever answering the question, why?
Why does this work?
Why does this work? Where did the gears come from? Why does when this do this, it does this? Like,
why osmosis?
right.
Why does it work?
And so that's where I like those two simple questions. How? We can answer a lot of hows.
Doesn't mean we got the why.
But there's not one single answer to the question of why outside of
why does this work?
a non-materialistic answer.
That's right. Why does it magically die and then comes back to life? And so when Jesus split the bread, the one who fills, this is hard to say, the fields with wheat is just showing that that's what he does. The one who multiplied the fish is the one who fills the seas with fish. And the one who
calms the seas,
heals
wounds,
heals people.
heals sicknesses.
He builds babies. He built the first humans. And so giving healing to a sick body, when he can make a body from nothing or from a sperm and an egg, that's what he does. And all his miracles fall into that. And Lewis would even point out, and if you said, well, what about raising the dead? Obviously, if you can make nothing into something, raising the dead is a similar thing. But he even points out that that will be his future thing that he does. So even that's kind of like a foreshadowing. He will raise the dead to life. So Jesus is doing a miracle that shows he's God. And it shows it in a very simple way. He's not just providing them with food to eat. He's showing that every time you eat, God has given you a gift. And that's a good reason to give thanks. And God loves you and he feeds you. The fact that everyone eats is enough proof that God is good. And so he did. And also, by the way, they took up 12 baskets. It's never said why 12 baskets. However, it's hard not to guess that since there's 12 apostles and they all said, send these people away so they can eat, and Jesus says, you give them something to eat, that not only did they have enough to feed, they had abundance enough that each of them had a basket full when they were done. So the giving, the ministering to these people, the serving them did not empty their stores. There's always more. God can always give more. Beautiful story and a good place to stop right there with all that to think about. That's a lot to think about.
Yeah.
My brain hurts now.
I often thought about the 12 baskets of just practically like there's 5,000 people in groups of 50s. You probably just had the 12 disciples going around and then they ended up with all their baskets.
Picking up the leftovers.
Coming back
like
full.
I said, though, the people today would not, they're like, that's all we get? Fish and bread? Tell you, you're not hungry enough. Although there's nothing better than fresh bread. I can eat fresh bread plain if it's just out of the oven. And just imagine Jesus' bread. I mean, that's got to be good stuff. Jesus fish.
I do love fresh bread with butter and some coarse salt on it.
He probably didn't eat it. It probably tasted like that. Probably the bread, when he broke that fish, it came out fried. He's like, this is good stuff, Jesus.
All right. On to the next segment, cultural commentary, current events.
I want to talk about sex.
This is the time to give a warning for younger listeners to leave?
No, I'm not talking about any of those details. I just want to make this clear because the reason why is we're surrounded by sexuality and mostly perversion.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
It's ingrained in us.
So let's list it. You have video porn, picture porn. You have women porn, which is literature. It's a historic novel. Yeah, well, sure it is. And then you have television porn.
The way certain segments of the population dress out in public.
You have risque dressing. It's hot. Back in the day, you knew hookers because they had to dress a certain way to get attention. Now we just call that junior high. What's wrong with us? And then you've got
good luck
OnlyFans.
Say good luck going to the gym.
Yeah, go. I always thought there should be a gym for men and a gym for women. Why should they go together? I don't. It's different. They use those tiny little weights anyway. So and then they underdress when they go. So you got underdressed women. You got those doggone yoga pants. no one should have an uncovered hiney wearing yoga pants is my rule for society. I can't find it in the Bible. But first, if it's good looking, why are you doing that? You shouldn't be showing the world the exact shape of your everything. And if you're not, the rest of the people are trying to not say something. And I'm like, ugh. So just cover that stuff up.
And you're just tempting your Christian brothers in ways you ought not to.
Yes. And so it's not my fault if you're a perv. Well,
Kind of.
it
Kind of is.
no, it's but in any case, there's also OnlyFans and prostitution. There's horrible things known as kiddie porn and child trafficking. There is homosexual behavior, all of it. There is polyamorous behavior, orgiastic behavior. There is people who are having sex outside of marriage because they're not married, or they are married, having sex outside of their marriage. There is cross-dressing. There are fetishes of all the strangest kinds, some of them violent, some involve animals, some involve the dead. There's
Feet.
What's that?
Feet.
Yeah, I didn't want to get into the fetishes. Actually, most serial killers is a sexual fetish, and
Didn't know that.
pyromania is often a sexual fetish.
Didn't know that either.
It is, and so you have a lot of messed up sex. What's the result in our society? Our society says you should be free to have whatever sex you want, provided you don't hurt anybody. But what you're hurting is society. So what does God say he designed human sexuality for? Just to keep this clean, so we know our starting point. Christians should talk about sex and sexual morality. We're scared of doing it. People even say, oh, you're from the purity culture. You made everyone feel guilty for not being a virgin. Or they say we're prudes, or they say awful things about us, or we're obsessed with it. Let me show you very simply, and by show you, I mean you will see it yourself. I'll just say it. If you obey God's plan for sex, what will happen? First, music will begin to play. Whoa! So, what do you think? What's God's plan for sex? Will, you're my guinea pig.
Institute the family?
No.
To make oneness of flesh?
No. I'm not asking his philosophy. What is his plan? How should sex happen for humans?
Oh. Inside of the covenant of marriage.
What does that mean, covenant of marriage?
It's when
Two dudes get together and get married?
one woman leave their parents and make a new family by becoming one.
So those two people, can other people be in the room with them?
No.
No. Can they experiment and try out other partners before they get married to make sure they have the right one in God's plan?
No.
Can they try each other out before marriage?
No.
No. So his plan seems pretty uptight to our society.
Yes.
Only men and women, only one man, one woman can have sex.
Yeah.
Okay.
One man, one woman
Each.
for one lifetime.
For one lifetime, unless one of them dies. And it's after they're married.
Yes.
So if everyone
I feel like I'm waiting for the trick question.
It's not. This is logic. This is a logic test. It's a hypothetical logic test. So if everyone in the United States, everyone, voluntarily obeyed that and never broke that simple rule, what would the effect be on the quality of life for every person in this country?
I think it would be immeasurably better.
Why?
There would just be so much less strife. Like, there's so many things that outflow from the misplaced sex drive.
Okay, so there's the removal of the negative. What's kind of the negative?
Broken families.
Yes.
Missing parents. The pain you can cause each other
Missing
in relationships.
parents means what?
You have sex either outside of marriage or inside of a marriage you don't respect and abandon, and the child is left.
So children without a mom and a dad.
Yeah.
Everything in society that we study says a child raised with its own mom and dad is better off in general. Now, obviously,
Yeah.
someone says, what if he beats him and a single dad doesn't? Okay, stop being stupid. All things being equal. If he's a good man and he stays there and does what he's supposed to do, and the woman does too, the child is better off. Fatherlessness is an epidemic problem that leads to all the crime in our inner city just about could be solved if there was not fatherlessness in the home. What else? What's the other negative repercussions of sex outside of God's plan? Diseases?
Yeah, diseases, and we've largely mitigated those.
Have we?
But, yeah.
And there's no AIDS left?
I'm just saying.
No monkeypox?
I'm saying
No
historically.
chlamydia?
Compared to
No,
historical
chlamydia
issues,
is all over the place. And
that negative.
gonorrhea, syphilis, or you have to be treated for them.
Yeah, you have to be treated for them.
Yeah. And if it's HIV/AIDS, you're treated for the rest of your life, or you'll die.
This is true, but they have treatments now. I'm just saying.
So disease is another thing we'd prevent. So what about?
I think there's a lot of.
What about child abuse? How much sexual child abuse goes on?
A lot more than
In
we
and
care
out
to
of
acknowledge.
families. In and out of families. And that affects those people for the rest of their lives to some extent. There is a healing and healing in Christ, but the scars are the scars. So that sort of detachment and abuse. So the quality of people's lives go down. What else happens is so on the positive side of the ledger, children are more likely to behave. Men are a lot more likely to be responsible. People, everything would get better in society if people would simply behave sexually.
Yeah, and there's the one thing I want to touch on is just it's becoming more apparent after decades of saying free sex is good, of just the amount of emotional damage you do to yourself and to each other when there's lack of the committed relationship. And it's like
most women,
it's not, nobody's happy. Like when you fall into the trap of believing what the world teaches you about it and you do it for a while, you just find yourself empty and void and hating yourself and generally hating the other sex and distrusting the other sex. And it's like, there's
mess.
a lot of spiritual damage done in
And
the
emotional
lie that
damage.
It's all free and okay. Like, it's not a big deal.
Nothing but trouble comes from it. People kill each other over it. People are lonely because of it. It would force, if you will obey this, it will force you to take steps that lead to wisdom. Already the success formula in life for Americans is no sex before marriage, get married, have babies and a job, and just do those things, and you will be a financial success. Odds are in your favor.
Thomas Sowell, baby.
Yeah, and so that's known.
Just to reiterate, that's a world-renowned PhD economist. There's like 3 rules that will avoid most hardship. It's like
no babies before marriage.
Get married
and get a job.
That's
any
job.
And stick with it.
It
doesn't matter about education. If those 3 factors are with people who have successful, balanced lives. Now, where was I going with this? I had something profound and you broke me off there.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. Maybe it wasn't profound.
You do it to me all the time, though, in fairness.
Yeah, that's true. It was like, remember Steve Martin said, oh, I forgot what I was going to say. People say, well, then maybe it wasn't important. And he goes, oh, yeah, I'm radioactive. He's like, well, maybe it is important. So, this is it. Men would get married if all women would live like this. Because the sex drive is very strong and the pursuit drive is strong in a man. You say it's the same in the women. It's not the same. Women have sex for different reasons. They do have drives, but they have sex for different reasons, often because they want to catch a man, keep a man, or make the man they love know that they're loved.
This is George Gilder. We brought him up earlier. But he talked about, George Gilder wrote a bunch of books. You can look them up. But he's got this thesis that men and women have different sexual cycles. The man's sexual cycle rotates at about every 5 minutes, And the woman's sexual cycle is about 18 years long. Because it goes till the kid's out of the household. And he said that if the women in society subvert or submit themselves to the man's sexual cycle, you get a cultural ethic of like a biker gang or a fleet of Vikings. And if the opposite happens, if the man submits himself to the woman's 18-year sexual cycle, what you end up getting is civilization and cathedrals and society.
That he's exactly right, and I never heard of that, and I have to think about it more. But yes, but let me add to that though that if the sex can only be within marriage, and marriage is for a lifetime, you're going to invest a lot more in happy marriages, because who wants to be married to an idiot for their life? And secondly, you're going to invest more in care for who you marry. Men will work harder to get ready to be married because women in general don't want to marry down. There are exceptions, but they marry the same or they marry aspirationally, moving up. It's just a fact of it's just true. Or mate. Let's say they don't marry. They seek a certain type of man. Go ahead.
Can I give a piece of advice there to young men? This is just a pet peeve of mine.
Hold on to it for 1 minute, because let me finish this thought. So you would begin to come up with the kind of customs people always said were old-fashioned. Like you have to have chaperones. Well, why did you have to have a chaperone? Well, because you wanted to make sure that they were keeping the ethic sexually till they didn't get married till they were supposed to, and that the man was a gentleman, and you got there to that point. That's why you had dowries and whatnot. And that's why families would often speak into the marriage. You may hate all that and say, nah, we're free. We're a mess. And our society is a mess. And the quickest way to clean it up is not education. It's not get rid of drugs. It's not fight crime. It's simply if everyone would sexually obey God, literally, most all of our society's problems would go down exponentially, instantly. It's that simple. The Christian view of marriage and sex is extremely important for any healthy society. So it's okay if we obsess with it. Now, I want to introduce you to our newest section of our show. It's called Advice for Young Men from Will. Do we have any intro music here?
It's not even just for young men. It's
dun,
for all
dun,
men.
dun.
This is not a unique thought to me, but it does annoy the living daylights out of me. If you're a young man and you're about to get married, or if you are married and you say this all the time, stop saying it. I hate it when men go and like, I married up. I can't believe she would marry a schmuck like me, or this like the humility shtick, like the false humility shtick. Like they think it's like a nice thing to do for their wife. I can't believe she was, would marry such a schmuck like me. I totally won the lottery with her, right? What are you saying about your wife? That she's some idiot who picked a bad man? Like you're not really.
So what should you say?
Like you want to honor your wife.
Of course she picked me.
No, you don't do that either. But at the same time, it's like the false humility thing,
I am
or
awesome.
even if it's honest humility thing.
I like to every day I say to my wife,
You're basically telling people that your
sweetheart, you got lucky.
You basically, you're
That's
basically
what Will
telling
says
people,
to us. Hey, Carly, guess what? Lucky again today. Look at this guy.
No, but but it goes to your point that they don't marry down, or rarely do, and they don't want to be married to the schmuck that feels lucky to like. They want to be married to a competent, caring man that honors them. So like, okay, maybe you are humble on the inside, or like, but you want to be the competent, respectable husband that she wants, because she doesn't want to be married to a schmuck.
That's why we call you Top Shelf Will.
So don't say it. Don't say it. It makes your wife look like a fool.
You're seeing the big picture. But when I say it, honey, all I mean is dudes are ugly and chicks aren't.
Well, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, call your wife hot. That's good. Like that's true.
I mean, let's face it. Let's face it. Men don't put on makeup, and if they did, they look gay. They don't look good, and they don't. Men have the same hairstyle for years. So, right? They're like, we're doing this again. Women actually go, hey, maybe I'll get some color and some extension. I'm going to do this stuff.
I think I've had this hairstyle since I was in like first grade.
Like I had one hairstyle really until I had to get married. No, so I had to cut it when I got married. That came out wrong. And then I kept that pretty much hair until
COVID.
COVID.
You
I
grew
said,
out your hair.
screw it. We're growing. And I'm not alone. There's all kinds of dudes with hair now.
Yeah.
But yeah, and now I'm thinking, how long do I keep this up? But as a man, I'm like, why change? I figured out how to do it. Guys don't change their hairstyle. They don't care. They don't put moisturizer on, most of us, on our skin.
My wife just made me start doing it.
Oh, you're so.
Apparently, I'm looking old.
You are so femme.
I only don't do it all the time, but
such a
she's
girl.
yelling at me. I'm starting to out age her, and she doesn't like it. Hey, so
she did marry a schmo.
she did marry Schmo.
See, he said it.
On this topic,
Got him.
because it sounds like you woke up in the night with like an epiphany of how to fix all of society's problems, and it all
I didn't really
hinges
wake
on
up
sex.
in the night. It was something different.
But
It was something different.
you know,
Go on.
So I was in India recently.
I was just thinking of the fact that we get criticized all the time for talking. You know, Christians are the uptight ones on sex. I'm like, sex is very important for humans. Anyway, let's hear the story about sex and India.
So I was in India.
Sex in India. Take one. I was on a bus.
No, well, so it was.
There were 800 of us. Oh, I accidentally became a dad. That's a weird country.
No.
By the way, you're disqualified from being a pastor now.
No, their practice in India pretty much universally. I mean, there, you know, exceptions exist everywhere, but regardless of Hindu, Muslim, Christian, they still do arranged marriages.
Yes,
The whole society,
the whole deal.
is arranged marriages. Your parents pick your mate.
There's
you
some
meet-
flexibility.
There's some flexibility.
A lot of families give you veto power.
Sometimes you meet for a month or so before, but like the couple we were staying with, I think they met for like 2 weeks before they were married.
T-Lock, my buddy who's college educated and everything, and his wife too. And she grew up in New York, and he grew up in India. He's upper class. And by the way, it's funny, when I met T-Lock, he learned I moved to New Jersey. He goes, "You are in New Jersey. There are many Indians there." He said, "Go to Kmart. You will find them there." I'm not kidding. I'm like, they just keep them in Kmart. But he, from the upper classes, who came to America, had an arranged marriage with his wife from New York.
Yep. So that was interesting, right? And we were talking about it around after dinner one night, and they're very much in support of it. You know, I'm speaking to two different couples, so 2 husbands, 2 wives, and both the wife and the husband. It's they don't understand why people from the West
Don't do that.
don't do it,
Because we like to marry idiots and have divorces.
and the more we talked about it, I was like, oh, well, I mean, obviously, you know, I can see pros and cons, but I started seeing more of the pros, and they're like, well, one, when you're 21, you're an idiot, and what do you know about what you want in a spouse? They're telling me, like, you're driven by lust, and your parents know, because they've been married, that 21-year-old lust isn't going to last 20 years. Yeah. And if you have good parents who are wise, I know there's a bunch of ifs, and want what's best for you, like, they're going to have good insights on what a good woman or a good man would be for you. And they were all in support of it, and it was just an interesting concept.
I heard two people influenced me very easily. I heard I think it was Dennis Rainey who I heard him on like Family Life or one of these, James Dobson or something, talking about interviewing your daughter's date, because he wrote a little book. And then I also heard Tony Evans say, "I'm going to go out. I date you first."
Yeah.
And he talked about, you know, how guy comes to the door, says, "I'm taking your daughter out." He takes a look, he says, "No, you're not," shuts the door. And so I put those together and told my daughters, "You're not dating till you're 16. And I started them pre-puberty, before they had any leverage over me, and they just believed it. And when you do, I date them first. And it works, especially if my date with that man has an interview in it. And I do that very thing and did that very thing. And both of my daughters have, well, I have three really, but one of them's never getting married. But there's nothing I can do about that. The ones that did marry, married good spouses. And one of them refused to listen to me over this person she wanted to date in college. And by the way, when she was in college, I said, you know, you're at an age, if you want to just make the decision yourself, you can. No, Daddy, I still want you to do it. So I interviewed this guy and I said, no, this guy is not for you. I know you got a crush on him, but he's got a lot of insecurities. He's very anxious and you're very anxious. The two of you will be a basket case. He's insecure. He's raised by his mama, which is fine, but he hasn't grown up yet. He doesn't, you know, it's not going to work. Okay. So she didn't date him, but she kept going to the place he worked, which was a coffee shop. Till 6 or 8 months later, she's like, Dad, interview him again. And no matter what, she was going to date this guy. And she did. And it was horrible. It was a nightmare. An absolute nightmare. Because you're right. Hopefully in those arranged, and by the way, she would end up marrying a guy that I said, yeah, he's a good guy for you. I can't produce the spark.
Right.
So you know, they figure out who they feel excited. Oh, he's handsome and wonderful themselves. So unlike the Indians, they provide the candidate. But that bit of screening I'm sure it kept them from, it gave them a place to go and it kept them from trouble. My other daughter, she only dated one guy. And it was a guy that passed the interview. I had one guy who flunked the interview. I took him out to eat and he'd been bugging my daughter. I really liked him because he loved my daughter. And she says, Dad, you got to talk to this guy. And I don't think I want to date him anyway. But so I met him and we're having pie. I took him to King's. It's the date, pie. And I'm interviewing him. And he's wearing a hat with a pot leaf on it.
Good start.
Or it's a misshapen maple leaf, one or the other. And I said to him, so somewhere in the middle, do you smoke dope? Do you smoke pot? He stopped and was silent as all get out. But he really wanted to date my daughter. So I think he quit right then. Because he said, no. But he knew he had the hat on. I said, what's with the hat? He goes, well, I used to. Well, we got through the...
You ever heard the Mitch Hedberg joke?
No.
I used to do drugs. I still do, but I used to too.
So anyway, he ended up, I ended up, look, she's a Christian. You're not. And he came to church several times afterwards, but it never worked out. I was able to get a guy who would let me, the father-in-law, say, tell me about your walk with Christ. Tell me about your sexual history. Woohoo! That's a one-on-one. And then I explained the standard for my daughters. And it was like, if a very conservative one-piece bathing suit covers it, you will not touch it. Okay? And I no guns or any of that stupid stuff. And until you're married. Okay? And then I said, will you do that? Yes. And then I'd say, will you make a vow? And I'll tell you what, you may think it's corny, but you bring the best out of a man when one older man asks a younger man, make me a vow. And then
them serious words.
And Zach and Nathan both did. And then I said this, and in order to date my daughter, from time to time, I'm going to ask you if you're keeping that vow. Is that okay? I tighten that noose hard around that neck. And I mean, it ain't quite an arranged marriage, but I taught my daughters, you don't just run off with the first person you have a crush on in 8th grade and like, oh, I love you and we're going together. And there's nothing wrong with the crush because that's what brings people together. But you can have a crush on any idiot.
Yeah, and oftentimes you do.
And often there's women who will drive a man crazy. You can have a crush on a woman.
Uh-huh.
My son was going out on a date with this girl. He's taking her out, and I had different rules for my son, and yes, I did, and because he's not a woman. But one thing I did says, did you ask her dad if you could take her to this date? And he said, no, Dad, I didn't ask her, but she's already got the dress and it's a high school thing and we're going. I said, did you ask her, Dad? No, but Dad, you don't understand. It's not like that with them. I said, son, you've got to show respect for this woman, and I want you to show respect for her father. You go ask him. Oh, don't make me, Dad. So then he did ask her. And then he came back. I said, how'd it go? He said, I said to him, may I take your daughter to this dance? And he said, I thought you already were, and made me feel really stupid. I'm like, well, at least yes.
At least, yeah. That's about the easiest that can go.
So anyway, yeah. So all these ideas that go into dating, we think, oh, it's so corny. We have no rituals for dating and choosing. Swipe left is not a ritual, right? We have no protections. You could choose any idiot, and often you do. A lot of women choose idiots when they're young, and it would be nice if Dad helped them.
Yeah.
And then they end up married to the idiot, and the idiot's abusive or awful or adulterous, and then he's gone, and she's a much wiser woman. And often if she gets married again, she makes a much better choice. Well, weren't there any men in this poor girl's life who could help her along? Anyway, so yeah, get the sex right. I can't change all society, but I would say this to young men and young women: do sex God's way, and your life is so much less likely to get screwed up. Pardon
Amen.
the pun. I didn't mean that as a pun. It just came out that way.
It's true though, and the world's lying to you. That there's a significant amount of pain in the other route too. You're saving yourself from.
You're not missing anything.
You're not missing anything.
You're not missing anything by playing the field, as it's called. And
that's it for me. We got no Ask the Pastors today.
did we finish up?
We went through everything we wanted to cover.
Oh, okay.
Well,
Let me take this moment during this election season to tell you all vote. In case you haven't noticed, this election is huge. We have communists on one side. Now, whatever you think of the other side, you do not want communism or socialism. You have one side that had a convention, that had a van out slaying babies. They slayed at least 25 babies by the second or third day. And they said
a mobile
baby
abortion
slayer and
clinic.
vasectomy. How do you know something is from Satan? Do you have a mobile abortion thing outside?
The 20-some foot tall inflatable IUD, like
Which is a
abortifacient,
birth control.
It's a birth control that.
Let's not get into details. Look it up yourself,
It's
but
not
not
good.
with pictures. Do not
They had
Google
a
it.
blow up. A blow up thing that goes in.
That's enough of you. So yeah, he gets the point. And I hate to say it, but they have no God on their platform. They love abortion. They love mutilating young men and women. They are communistic, and communism is of the devil. It's not just an alternative form of government. And we could talk about that another time. And in our counties where we are at Harvest, probably 30 to 40% of the Christians, at minimum, never vote. They can vote, they don't vote. That might be you. We need you this time. Every vote counts. And listen, we're not going to die no matter who wins, because we work for the Lord. But it's love of neighbor to try to do your best to give the best society to live in. So go and vote your conscience, but make sure you vote this November. Vote early, and like the Democrats say, vote often. No, don't do that second part, but just vote early, or vote now, or vote soon, or vote. Did you know in Armstrong County that they have early voting? You can actually just go to the courthouse.
I did not.
And you can just vote anytime you want.
I did not.
I'm going to do that. I'm going to do as soon as it's
wild.
open. I'm just going to go vote and get it out of the way. That way I don't have to do it on voting day.
Yeah.
And
I need to get my wife's address changed.
Yes.
She's going to have to drive back to Westmoreland County.
Well, if she has to, have her do it, but or get it changed. How long have you been married?
6 years.
Okay.
6 plus.
6 plus. You still do things separately. She hasn't changed her address. You did. That's an odd thing.
Yeah, I should have just done it for her, but
Not a very thoughtful husband, are you?
Just a schmuck.
Just
She's
a schmuck. He
so
married
lucky.
up. He married up.
So
And with
lucky.
that, we sign off. Good night, everybody.
See you, everybody.